What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings Podcast Studio. Podcast Studio. I am joined today by my good friend, Mr. Sedat Oezgen. Is that correct? Secret of the Oezgen.
Oezgen, yeah.
I told you I was going to mess it up, buddy.
Don't worry, man. Don't worry. I heard worse things. That's really good, bro.
How are you doing today, my friend?
So far, so good. So far, so good. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. We've been wanting to do this for a while now.
Yes, unfortunately, there were some hiccups, down the road. But,
Telling you.
Luckily, yeah.
Technology.
But,
technology is great when it works, right?
Yeah, and when it works right, and when you have someone who knows how to do that, and I'm obviously not the kind. I got this really nice setup. My brother, he gave me this Rode mic, and he was like, "Hey, if you ever want to do like YouTube videos," and I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then
That's awesome. Yeah, you have the professional equipment, got the Rode mic and everything, looking good.
Yeah.
So we were chatting a little bit before we started. We have mutual friends in Guy and Ian Dorian, also
Exactly.
like amazing artists and incredibly inspiring. You've known them for like almost 20 years, you said?
Yeah, I know. I've known Guy for 20 years, and I think I met Ian like 8 or 9 years ago, and we've been friends ever since. Funny thing is, as you mentioned earlier, our birthday is on the same
Yeah,
day, and these guys they helped me out with so many things in the past when I was like still struggling to get work and everything. They introduced me to someone who I did some work with, and yeah, and they were just stand up guys, really great people, and I love the guys.
Yeah, they really
It's
are. And it's funny how similar they are, but also how different they are.
Tell me, man.
Yeah.
When I met them for the first time together, I was like, okay, you're twins, but you're very, very, different from each other
Yeah.
because, one of them is, if you look at Guy is more like the boxing kind of guy, and Ian is more like he's into like the artistic
Yes.
of his what do you soul or and character, and then like also like when you look at their art, you can clearly distinguish who's who because Guy is more like a Kirby, Michael Golden kind of John Byrne kind of type of
For
person,
sure.
and Ian is more like Frank Frazetta, Bill Sienkiewicz, John Buscema, these kind of artists, and you can see that in their art. I find that so interesting because they're brothers. They were, they experience everything together. They've seen all the books, and when they were small together and everything, and still they went to two completely different roads. That's kind of interesting
Yeah,
to
it's
see.
really cool to like compare and contrast and like you said, you can definitely see the different influences and in the differences in personality. Like I could have done like a 6-hour podcast with them. Like they have so many great stories and everything, and Guy is
Yeah,
such a big personality and Ian's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more, I would say Ian's a little bit more zen.
yeah, yeah. I think it's kind of funny, like when you because you see that they're twins and they look so much alike, and still there are these differences in character and their behavior and the way they were talking. Like if you talk to Guy, he's like everything is on point, and Ian is more like he likes to talk about how he experienced something,
Yeah.
the emotions that he felt, completely different, but
Yeah.
still, yeah, great guys.
More philosophical.
Yeah.
Now, what part of the world are you coming to us from today?
Okay, so I live in Germany.
Okay.
I've lived here for past 39 years
Wow.
or 38. No, 39 years. And I was born in Turkey, actually, in a city called Batman. That's
Oh
not a
my
joke.
God, amazing.
Seriously. Like if you Google it, that's the thing. Like when I had dinner with Jung Lee, and we were like talking a little bit, and I was like, dude, you should hire me because wouldn't it be the coolest thing to have the guy who was born in Batman drawing Batman, and Jim look at
Yeah.
me and was no.
Nope. Nope. Nice try, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, that's so amazing. So what time is it there in Germany?
It's 8:40 p.m.
Okay. Nice and early 11:40 a.m. here, and you've already gone through your day. Did you have a lot of work today? Were you working on some projects?
Yeah, I think I can talk about the fact that I'm working on a project. I'm working with Marc Guggenheim on Creator on book, right?
Nice.
It's a science fiction book, and I'm into the third issue right now. And I've been drawing the pages on, or the artwork is on 60 by 22,
Oh, so you're
so
doing
it's
like
twice.
double up, you're doing like twice up?
Yeah, and which
Just
is
like the old masters, man. Jack Kirby, he was drawing big.
the thing is, last year I think it was last year I met Dan Didio, the former um, DC publisher, and we talked a little bit, and he's currently working with Frank Miller on the FMP thing, the Frank Miller Productions, and we were talking about one of the books, and he said, and all of the pages were just basically splash pages, yeah. And he said, this is a visual medium, so the art should
Right,
breathe,
right.
and I have a hard time like working on 11 by 17, especially because I like to add so many details and everything to the stuff. When I have to draw like small figures, I want to make sure that they look cool and not as if I just
Yeah.
doodle them in there. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, I did a few commissions in the past which were oversized. I never did any pages oversized, and then I was like, yeah, I should try it. And in the beginning, it was like, oof, dude, you can't imagine how difficult it was because you look at that giant ass page and you're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to do that? And now I've basically come down to doing one page a day on oversize, which is
That's
pretty
impressive.
cool. And
Yeah, that's impressive
yeah,
for the ability it gives you to go in and put that extra detail, the fact that you're still, being regimented and cranking out a page a day. That's impressive, brother.
yeah, but see, the thing is, I'm a weirdo. I don't have a life outside of drawing. Basically, I
Right.
don't. I don't care about anything else. That's the problem with me. And I'm like very focused when it comes to that stuff. And the cool thing is that Mark, when he wrote the script, he wrote it specifically just for me. He knows what I like. You know, we've known each other for a while, and then after some time, we were like, "Hey, we should work together on something." And
Yeah.
he kind of like he was like, "Hey, I have this project and that project." I was like, "Hey, you know what? We could turn this into a sci-fi book, and this could have sci-fi in there." And then he was no,
Yeah.
let's do a real sci-fi book that was planned as a sci-fi book. And then came those writer strikes in New York because of all the AI crap that was going on,
Yes.
and he got the idea from that. I can't, unfortunately, I can't go into specifics,
Yeah, no
but
worries.
the thing is, yeah, the thing is like it's a really cool book. It has a very interesting premise, and that's all I can say right now. But the cool thing about the whole thing is like, first of all, I'm designing the whole world. You know, like like Mark sends me some descriptions, and I'm like, hey, Mark, I think this would make more sense if we did it like this and that and that. And he's like, oh, I like your thinking, and then we just use that, and you in terms of like the clothes the characters are wearing, all the designs and everything is kind of like very original. I'm mixing all my love that I have for sci-fi and fantasy together with a little bit of I don't know, like cultural garments and everything, and putting it in there to make the characters look very unique. I would say, I don't know if that's the case, but I would say you've never seen anything like this in any movie or TV show or comic or something like that. But maybe some people will look at it and say, "Hey, this reminds me of Star Wars."
Yeah. Yeah, you know how it is. Like people will go in there and say that, oh, you must have pulled this from this. And it's like, no, I just kind
Yeah,
of
exactly.
came up with it on my own. But yeah, it's hard to see things and not subconsciously be influenced by them. So there might be like little undertones of things in there. You know, speaking of sci-fi, like I'm a huge sci-fi guy my whole life. I love sci-fi. And I'd like to know I'm gonna ask you this so that when I look at the work, I can pick out the little influence. And what's some of your favorite sci-fi coming up over the years?
So obviously, I mean, Star Wars. The original trilogy.
Yes.
Also, the prequels. I was quite young when the prequels came out, and actually, I liked them. Especially episode 1 and 3. And the Alien is, to me, Alien is the definition of perfect movie.
Yeah.
Um, Blade Runner, and and ironically, I know this is to sound really weird, but my understanding of science fiction is based on visual, uh, what would you call it? Visual impulses that I have, which I know do not exist. And this is kind of funny. It's whenever I think of science fiction, I think of a movie that doesn't exist or a TV show that doesn't exist. I don't know. It's like maybe I'm pulling something out of the multiverse
Yeah.
where actually this stuff exists in another dimension, and I'm just picking it out and using it in my own stuff. But I think what I like to do is I like to look at what actually exists in this world and how could I use it. And ironically, this is one of the funnier things. I created a robot for our book, and then shortly afterwards, uh, one of those open AI robots was introduced,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw the picture, and I had a reason why I designed the robot the way I did. Because Mark wanted to have him look more like a human, and I had a different idea. And then I sent him the picture, and I said, "Dude, I was ahead of my time."
Yeah.
You know?
Ended up looking very similar, huh?
It's not similar, but there's once the book is out, I'm gonna explain to you
Okay.
why I designed the character the way I did. Because then it'll make sense because I actually have a story behind the design from one of the experiences I made in my life, and then when I saw that picture of the robot, I was like, oh shit, everyone's everyone's going to say you stole it from them,
Yep.
and but it is what is it. It is,
Yeah.
it's like these days it's really difficult to like either not be inspired by anyone or by anything that's on the internet, or not to be compared to whatever's out there, because one of my friends who looked at the pages said, "Oh, this reminds me of Dune." I was like, "Yeah, because I'm a fan of brutalist architecture, and so is Denis Villeneuve."
Right.
So I didn't steal from him. I was inspired by the brutalist architecture that was used in the Soviet Union and everything.
Yeah.
And but people will always try to like make that a connection, but they don't know the source of the connection.
Yeah. We're always looking for patterns and to see where things
Exactly.
came from. Yeah, that's really interesting what you said about, sometimes these things just come to you. And I've heard several other like creative people and also like scientists. I know over the years there's been like several inventors and things where they're like, I don't know where it just came to me, like it came from somewhere else and I had this idea and then I
Exactly.
and then I
Yeah.
made this discovery or I created this thing. So it's really cool that you're able to, kind of take that and channel it and mold it and make it into something your own. That's very cool.
Yeah. The thing is, like, sometimes I keep thinking, is this maybe some influence that from something that I've seen in my childhood, or maybe it just in passing you see something, but then it somehow it's stuck in there and you don't do it consciously.
Yeah.
From what I can tell, like most of the time I'm trying to like go for stuff that uh, you wouldn't expect, kind of like if you look at, like, I've most of the sci-fi that that I've seen lately has a character in there that kind of looks like Iron Man, from the
Yep.
2007 or 2008 Iron Man movie. And they always have the same pose, and everyone has a bike that's very similar to the bike from Tron. And then it's always in a dystopian future, and there's a certain game that everyone plays, and it's like very, very repetitive. How do you
Repetitious.
pronounce it? Yeah,
Repetitive or
repetitious, and
repetitious, yeah.
and yeah, repetitive. And I'm like, whenever I see something like that, I'm like, hey, can we not do that? Because I don't want to serve you the dish that everyone else has served in the past.
Right.
And it's kind of like it's getting kind of boring with a lot of sci-fi. Like, if you look at most of the sci-fi stuff, everything is always very clean, and then you have like these super sharp super sharp shapes and everything. And I don't like that. I like the clunky stuff. I like when it looks like it was used by someone. And that's a kind of like science fiction I'm going for. Like, if you look at the original Star Wars, none of the starships and none of the environments looked like anything from episode one. That was like one of the things that I didn't like about the movie,
Yeah,
because
everything was too
even
clean in the
yeah,
prequels. Everything looked too clean and shiny and new.
exactly. And then if you think about it, it's like only 20 years after episode one. So in that time, or no, sorry, episode three. And then, in that short amount of time, all the spaceships are gone that you
Yeah,
used to use. I mean, dude, if you look on the streets, there are cars that are older, like, than my granddad. And,
exactly. Yeah. So I would say it's probably safe to say that given your design taste, your design aesthetics, and your love of Alien, was H.R. Giger influence at all on you?
yeah, I mean, there are certain aspects of his work where I was influenced, but I would say, like, once again, it's less about the creature itself. And, like, here's the thing. For me, the xenomorph is the perfect creature, and there's nobody, whatever comes after that, you have no chance.
Yeah.
It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Whoever comes after Arnold has no fucking chance to stand
Yeah.
next to him. Like, I mean, like, if you think about Conan, you always think about Arnold, right? That
100%.
being said, like, it's not a monster book, so I didn't create any monsters, and I tried to make this stuff, like I said, like, for example, I will take something that I saw from Egyptian culture, like the ancient Egyptian culture, and then use it in a sci-fi kind of context, and then, like, you look at a city, Los Angeles or New York, and then you think about, what if that city was bigger, and there were, like in the Fifth Element, for example.
Yeah, I love Fifth
It's
Element.
super crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love the movie. I mean, it's super cheesy and
it
everything, but
is.
it's cool, and it has amazing stuff in there. And I like the idea of using something that already exists, and then giving it a little bit of a new twist, and then add something from a certain culture. I don't know. For example, I really love, like, samurai kind of uh, armor and everything. So when if I can, I'm using that. But then again, there's like, I really love, like, medieval knights and all that stuff. And then, maybe I can use a plate that they are using for the shoulders and put it into a sci-fi context, and then make it basically look like something that's completely new. And then obviously there are other influences, like from comic book artists. I was like, heavily influenced by Rob Liefeld, even
Yeah,
if people don't see it in my work. But I love the guy. He has, like, the giant shoulder pads and
absolutely.
all the pouches and everything. Like, I know a lot of people, like, don't like Rob, and they talk really, shitty about him. But honestly, like, the dude created so much cool stuff. He made so many of us happy when we were kids, and up to this day. I mean, like, that new Deadpool movie is out, and it seems to be a huge
Huge
success, and
success.
people love it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and you got to give the man the respect he deserves for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And he actually came up on the last episode of this. And again, another person who was like, man, like when I was a kid, that stuff was amazing. It inspired me so much. And, I think he gets a lot of hate just because he's a big personality. He's very passionate. And, there's that underlying level of jealousy as well.
That's like that's like one of the main issues that I have with sometimes with certain artists is like when you don't need to shit on someone else to make yourself feel better. If you
Exactly.
think if you think you're a better artist, then go and create something cool that people will give you the respect that you're craving for. And if people don't give it to you, or don't feel that you're good enough or as good as the person that you're trying to like shit on, then maybe you should think about that, and maybe you realize that you're not the genius that you think you are.
Yeah.
And I personally, especially in this day and age, like all of us can live doing this, and everyone can eat. We just have to find the right area where we have to go to hunt for our food and
Yeah.
everything. We just you just gotta figure out your field, and that's the difficult thing. Everyone wants to be the next big guy, but it's kind of difficult when you are more concerned with social media and with outrage and all that stuff. Like, dude, how do people have the time to be on Facebook or Instagram
Yeah.
24/7? Like, I don't get
I don't either.
I don't get it. Yeah. And then like I think like social media is a great tool, or it was a great tool. Like, we see the decline of social media right now, unfortunately. But if you lose yourself in that world, you're going to go crazy, because if you're constantly looking for the next outrage, and then kind of like signaling to your group that you're on their side and everything. Like, I look at all that stuff and I think to myself, you people have too much time. Like, how
Yeah.
much time and effort can you invest into something? Like, even discussions on Facebook or whatever, on Twitter and whatever hellhole is available. Like, so you've been arguing with someone for 2 hours. Did you achieve anything? Did you get paid for those two
Yeah.
hours? Did you change that person's mind? It's just a waste of time. The only thing, for me, for example, when I was like super busy with the second issue, I did like 7 pages in 7 days or something like that. And prior to that, I had like other pages where I was like constantly working. I didn't check my Instagram account for, I think, 4 or 5 days.
Oh, that had to be like pretty refreshing.
I was like,
Yeah.
because I like to go through my feed and see what my friends are posting and everything.
Yep.
And I have no politics in there. It's just art.
Yeah. Same. I
And
like I,
and
I
it,
like that you can kind of curate Instagram and be able to,
yeah,
everything on mine is art, jiu-jitsu, of course, arm wrestling and all that. It's just the stuff I enjoy. Nothing,
yeah,
nothing controversial. I don't get on Twitter. I don't get on Facebook or anything like that. I just, like you said, there's time. We're kind of in a race against time. Time is such a commodity, and to be wasting that time on something that's not gaining anything or doing anything beneficial is kind of crazy to me.
and also health, like your mental health.
Yes.
What if you spend too much time on social media arguing with people, especially like you could be arguing with a 10-year-old without knowing,
Or a
right?
bot.
Yeah, and then you know he's pushing you, pushing you, pushing you, pushing you, and you know at a certain point you're like totally exhausted, and you wasted all your energy towards something stupid like this. If you want to make a change, go outside and help people. That's better than anything you can do than to be arguing 24/7 on Twitter or Facebook.
Yeah.
I like I I promised myself not to post any political stuff on Facebook or Instagram, also on Facebook, and because Instagram is basically just my art. Sometimes I'll post something in a story, and then just leave it as it is, like on Facebook, and then people start commenting, and then
Hmm.
somebody writes something really stupid, and the next person is outraged about that, and then it goes on. I'm like, delete this
Yeah,
motherfucking
yeah,
posting.
yeah. I think there's an interesting, I think it's a quote from one of the Buddhas or something. Basically, he was going through town and somebody was throwing insults at him and saying all these horrible things about him, and he didn't respond. He didn't like argue back. He just said basically, I give those things back to you. They're yours to carry. So it goes to what you were saying about like the damage that people are doing to themselves by getting in those arguments and things and letting
Yeah,
people
I
get
think
them
it
all
says,
worked up.
yeah, it's like the saying, right? Hurt people,
Yeah.
right? And and some people are just, unfortunately, are really like broken, and they want other people to suffer as well, and then they'll just go on the internet
Yeah.
and be miserable. And I like, I'm not one of those people who's like, hey, I need positive energy in my life and everything. But I'm like, dude, l- the world is fucked up as it is. Why should I go and join the madness and fight with people that I don't know? And I'm pretty sure, like, in 90% of the cases, it's like, when you sit down with, if you would sit down with that person, you'd find some things that you agree on, and then you'd be like, hey, he's actually a nice guy. Why did I argue with him?
Yeah.
But it's like, because there's distance, and you don't sit in front of each other. It's not face to face. That's where it gets
Yeah.
screwed up.
Yeah. Well,
And
face
then
to face, there's a lot of things that people wouldn't say that they will say with that little barrier of distance or the screen there. Louis C.K. had a great bit about that in one of his comedy routines. He said, when you're driving your car, there's no horrible thing you wouldn't say to somebody. You effing piece of whatever. Like, I'm going to kill you. I hope you die. And then he's like, you wouldn't do that if you were face to face with somebody on an elevator. You wouldn't be shouting those
yeah,
things to them. Like, can you
yeah,
imagine, right?
that's it. And like, I don't know, man. I feel like the crazies are running the asylum right now, and I I'd rather sit in my cell and just wait until the craziness is over, and then
Yeah.
once
Well, I
it's,
think it's too. I think like social media is kind of like a megaphone, so it can make it seem like there's a much bigger thing going on than there actually is, right? Like you have
yeah,
to scale back and go to your personal experiences when you're operating in the real world, and go, well, is it really that way, or is that little subsection of things getting blown up out of proportion? And it's, ultimately comes down to money because the engagement, like the algorithm,
yeah,
engagement equals money, clicks equal money. So if I can get you riled up and you're interacting with that thing, my bank account's going up, man.
yeah. But it's kind of funny, because personally, I think these companies, for example, I think if you would give people an incentive to use the app, for example, Instagram used to be the best app out there. It was so much fun to be on Instagram. You'd post something, you get, like, I don't know, 20, 30 followers a day.
Yep.
And then, a lot of people would like your stuff. They would share it. Then all of a sudden, oh my God, this great artist that I've been a fan of for 10 years started following me and all that stuff. And now they've taken all that away. And you can see that people are uh, less on Instagram because they are bored. They
Yeah.
they they don't like, they don't see, like, in my case, I don't remember when I posted something, like, it was probably like a month ago or something, and I used to post something on Instagram almost every 2 days or something like that, because I enjoyed the interactions that I had with the people and everything. So if they want to just uh, um, rile things up and make everything more aggressive and more like people jumping at each other's throats and everything, that may work for a short time, but then after a while people are like, totally exhausted.
Yeah.
It's like imagine you go to a clothing store, and the music there is always tuned up, like really loud, and you get a headache.
Yeah.
You maybe go there once, you go twice, you go 3 times, maybe go 10 times, but after the 10th time you're like, I can't do this shit.
Yeah.
I'm not going
Yeah.
there anymore.
Can't take it
And
anymore.
and then and then people are fed up. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of social media. Like, there is no incentive for people to be there. Like, sometimes you have very positive examples where, like, we were being told that content has to be very short, and people have a very short t- attention span. And then you have like the most successful podcast on the planet being the Joe Rogan Experience, which
Long.
is 3 to 4 hours,
Yep.
long format.
Yeah.
And if, for example, if I watch a video on YouTube, or I want to watch a video on YouTube, and I see it's only 5 minutes, then I'm not even turning it on
Right.
when I'm working. I want to have 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, so that I can dive into something and then, be occupied, can listen to it while I'm working and learn something. I don't want to like see, I don't know, some people licking poop off of a toilet as a
Yeah.
challenge. That's like, that's just deranged, and I can't deal with that kind of stuff. So I'm pushing all of that stuff out of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes me feel better.
I'm right there with you, my brother. So
Yeah.
I want to time travel back to your childhood. And given that you told me you've got such a obsession with art, it's all you think about, I'm guessing that started at a pretty young age. So can you take us back
Yeah,
and kind
it's
of tell us kind of how that developed, and how you got into art? And I'm assuming you got into comics at some point, and all of that. So why don't you take us along that journey of the young man coming up into this amazing world of comic book art?
okay. Be prepared for the most frustrating story of your life.
Okay, I'm ready.
No,
I'm
so
ready.
to be honest with you, like the first uh, memory that I have of me, drawing was like in kindergarten, and I remember I I did a drawing of a dinosaur, and the first thing that happened was that another kid came by and looked at it, and it looks, you know, this looks like shit.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, and I stopped drawing it. At a certain point, I went to school, and one of our first tasks in school was to draw like this bird. I don't know what kind of bird it was, and I made the drawing. And, went to school. It was homework, and then my teacher looked at it, and he was like, "You were supposed to draw it, not your sister or your mother or your dad,
Oh.
and everything." And I was like, "But I have drawn it." And he was like really angry. And then my sister came to pick me up, and he said to her, "Hey, your parents aren't supposed to do his homework for him." And she was like, "No, no, he did that." And at a certain point, I was like, I was always watching Transformers and He-Man and all that stuff, and I would draw that kind of stuff. The problem was like when my teacher saw it, he thought it was like violent stuff that I was drawing.
Yeah.
At a certain point, like I was like I was at my friend's home, and he had Mortal Kombat, and we were like only like 10 or 11 years old,
Mm.
and I saw that stuff and all the stuff that happened with the characters in it. Obviously, I drew it. And then my teacher, he talked to my father. He said, he's always like, he's paying attention, but he's always drawing, and he's always drawing this brutal stuff. You know, he can't do it, and not in school. And I was only in elementary school,
Yeah.
and then I was forbidden from drawing anything that is nice. Like houses, bullshit like that. And I was like, at home, I couldn't draw it because my father would, look if I was drawing anything that's not appropriate for kids. And then in school, I wasn't allowed to do anything neither. And then at a certain point, I was like, shit, what can I do? And then I started to draw WWE
Oh,
or
nice.
WWF
Yeah. Yeah.
wrestlers. Yeah. And gorillas and everything. And whenever somebody would say something, I would say, hey, this is just something from reality. I
Yeah.
didn't, this is not King Kong. This is just a gorilla. You know,
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I got my first comic book. As a matter of fact, it was my second comic book. The first comic book, and I'm going to come back to that later. The first comic book was another book, but the second one was X-Men by Jim Lee. And I had just broken my arm as a kid, and I was in the hospital, and we went down, and there was like a deli, and they were selling comic books as well. And my father was, he was, what do you want to have? I was like pointing to the comics, like the Jim Lee comic,
You had good
and he was
taste.
like,
You,
"But you can."
you had good taste from an
Yeah,
early age, man.
yeah, and he was like, "You can have all the candy you want, and that's what you're picking." I was like, "Yeah, I want this, I want this." He was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever," And then he bought it. He bought it for me, and we went home. And I'm right-handed, and I saw all those pictures, and I couldn't believe that anyone could draw something so beautiful. And then I would take tracing paper, and I tried to trace it with my left hand, which didn't work.
Yeah.
And then I took my broken arm and tried to trace those pictures with the broken arm. And that's it. In that moment, my father came into my room, and he saw me with the pen in my hand. He went crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from that point on, I was totally fixed. And I mean, I remember, as a matter of fact, I remember actually earlier when I was younger, I remember that I saw some Conan the Barbarian by John Buscema, and I saw some of Frank Frazetta's stuff being sold. Nobody would have ever bought it for me, so I didn't own those comics. So you asked what the first comic was. The first comic was actually, and this closing the circle,
Yeah.
was a comic called Terror Inc. It was connected to Punisher,
Okay.
and and I thought to myself, this is the shittiest art in the world.
Right.
Like when I saw it as a kid. Okay, 20 or 30 years later, I find this guy on the internet whose name is Jorge Safino, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And I became a fan immediately. Unfortunately, he passed away back in 2001. But I was like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. And I started to look for all of his work. And unbeknownst to me, he's that artist of the book. The problem being, like, remember, these are like early 90s. They were using really shitty colors
Yeah.
to color his work. It was not black and white. It was like these four colors. And with an artist such as Jorge Zafino, it's very difficult. Like, even in this day and age, I would think that there are very few colorists who could work on his black and white stuff and make it look cool. And back in those days, it was probably even harder.
Yeah.
And they totally screwed it up. And I wasn't able to appreciate the ability and the skills that man had. And he's, like, in my opinion, one of the greatest artists that ever lived.
Yeah.
And that was like, and yeah, I think that's pretty much how I got into becoming or reading comics. But I never really thought that it was an occupation or job that you could do, especially at the time where the internet didn't exist.
Right.
Yeah, and
Is it
there was
something
no.
too, like I was going to ask you culturally, like I've been talking to, people from a lot of different places in the world here on the podcast recently. And I talked to Erica Durso. She's in Italy, and she was telling me, like, drawing comics or selling your art isn't like looked at as this viable thing. Like, even she said it's not even worth like going to a comic book convention there, because compared to here, she has to like cut the price like way down to even sell anything, where she
Absolutely.
lives. But, you come here to the US, and it's like crazy the amount of money people will pay for your work and everything. So, like, you were talking about it, like, maybe not seeming like something that was a possible occupation for you. So I know that's a little bit here too. People look at it that way, but the way things have evolved now, did you find like a little bit of resistance, and it didn't seem like a viable, job to be able to look towards as a young man?
To be honest with you, a little bit of resistance is putting it very mildly.
Yeah.
Everyone was against. everyone. My parents, they thought I was crazy, you know, and all of my friends and family, they were like, obviously they liked the fact that I was drawing, and they saw that there was some spark in there that could like become something. They were like, hey, how do you want to do that? And you have to go to the United States and live there to make it. And I was like, no, there are people in Europe who are full-time comic book artists and everything. And I think, you know, I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it. Like in my head, I was like, okay, maybe I'll go into another branch of art, like concept art
Mm-hmm.
or character designs or something like that, just just to make art. But honestly, comics is like comics is like maybe crack or something like
Yeah.
that. Even if you kick it, it always draws you back. Like because I think I was out of comics for a few years and didn't want to draw comics anymore, and I was more interested in maybe working in computer games
Mm-hmm.
field and everything. And then I I lost. I no, I was still working at a company, but one of my friends, his name is Matt Yocum. He's a writer. He did some work for Marvel, and pretty badass guy. He's a former U.S. Air Force
Oh, wow.
lieutenant. Yeah, so pretty badass, super nice guy. Like he sometimes he would tell me certain things about what he experienced, but he never could go into
Yeah,
details and
yeah.
everything. And then you meet him, and he's super friendly, super nice guy. You would never think that he has anything to do with the military.
Right.
And he always wanted to work with me, and I always wanted to work with him. And then back in 2012, he connected, and he said, "Hey, I have this idea for a comic, and I think you'd be really good uh, on this book and everything." And then we started working together on that thing. And I still had a job at that time in a computer gaming company. And all of a sudden, like that project that ignited a fire in me. Like all of a sudden, I was drawing 24/7. Like when I was commuting to work, I was sitting in the train and drawing in my, like, I had this really big sketchbook I would carry it around, and I was like, always drawing in there for the 1.5 hours that drive to work, and then from the 1 hours back to
Right.
home. In the beginning, I would always like sleep at my commute because I didn't have to like change trains or something like that. It was just one way. And then after a while, I was like, hey, if you want to improve as an artist, you gotta be drawing, especially when you don't have anything to do. And I was like drawing, 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 and ironically, a few months later, I lost my job. I lost the job in that company, and I decided, I was like, okay, you know what? I got to go to New York Comic Con. Like, I thought to myself, I got to go there. I've been to San Diego before, back in 2007. But at that time, I was like, okay, you probably won't find any good jobs in the computer game industry. So you gotta go to one of the big conventions. Maybe someone will like your work and hire you. That's how super I was.
Right.
I'll go there once and get jobs. Because, as a matter of fact, the first convention that I ever went to, I came home with a gig. It was nothing big, but it was a gig.
Yeah.
And and then I went there, and I met um, Anthony Spade from Zenescope Comics, and he was like, "Hey, I like your work. Here's my card. Please send me a message, and then maybe we can have you draw something." And the guy came through, and I actually did like a book for them. And then after that, they wanted me to draw um, a whole series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I was thinking about, or we were starting to work on it, and then one of the editors was, he's not drawing sexy enough, because
Oh,
I'm not a tits and ass
right.
artist.
Right.
That's I could probably do it, but I don't want to do it. Like I don't like to like objectify women and that kind of stuff. Like like if you look at my work, it's more. I I want the female characters to be badass, like
Yeah.
Ripley from Elliot. I think
Yes.
I think I really like that when I see like female characters who are like strong and cool. Yeah, I'm like, that's the shit that I like. I
Definitely.
don't want to have, no offense to anyone who likes that kind of stuff or who draws that kind of stuff, but it wasn't working for me.
Yeah, and certain
And
publishers, especially in around that time, I think that was a big trope, right? Like it was all the crazy bikini babe superheroes and all of that.
yeah, and honestly, like there are people who are really good at this, but I'm not. I don't feel like, like if you would ask me, hey, can you draw a Witchblade comic? I'd be like, yeah, I could probably draw it, but it wouldn't look the Witchblade you'd had in mind.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. But if you ask me, hey, can you draw the darkness? I'm probably more inclined to do that because that's something that I feel like I can do something with the work because I mean, my work. I use a lot of blacks when I'm drawing and like
Yeah.
heavy blacks and everything has to have a certain kind of atmosphere and everything. And yes, I can adjust my work to the story, you know, but it has to be a story I really like, and I feel like I'm not the guy to draw Power Girl or Wonder Woman or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Although,
offense to anyone who
I
does.
will say
Yeah,
that new Wonder Woman design that they're doing for the new that thing that DC's kicking off here soon, that's pretty cool. Like she's all tatted up and stuff, and it's this cool character design. I think you could nail that one. It's
dude,
so
I don't want to draw Zeus. It's so difficult
it's a little
because
more
I get
little more gritty than the
yeah. I thinking with me is like I have this OCD where I would probably like research all her tattoos and then want to have them in the
be
drawing and then
accurate,
it's
real world accuracy, and know all
yeah.
the meaning behind all of it.
Yeah, kind of like that. And yeah, I don't know, man. There are certain characters, like for example, uh, I would never work as a Superman artist. Like my style doesn't work, or the way I would because the character is pure light, and
Yeah,
he's justice, he's freedom, he's liberty, he's like almost a godlike character, and to me that's like amazing. I love the character, but I'm more towards Batman
yeah.
because
That's what I was gonna
he's
say.
in
If I had my
yeah.
choice of where you went, like if you worked for DC, I would say Batman for sure. And but what I really would like to see would be you on a Cable book, because you draw a Cable like the best I've seen
Thanks,
out of
man.
anybody recently. So I definitely
Thank
I
you,
remember
thank you.
tagging you in something on Rob's one of Rob's things. I'm like, man, this guy needs to be on a
Yeah,
Cable book. But yeah,
yeah. I mean, there you go. Like that's because of the love that I have for Rob's work. I
yeah,
mean, he wasn't my main inspiration to become a comic book artist because that's 100% Jim Lee. Like Jim is responsible for that. And then there's also like Travis Charest and everything. Rob is also in there. Like he's basically in this giant cloud of inspiration
yeah.
that's always like hanging over my head. And like Cable is like one of those characters where I feel like there's so much cool stuff you can do with him. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie with Brad Pitt called Fury.
I am aware of it. I haven't seen the movie, but I
Yeah,
know the character he portrayed and everything. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And that's like kind of when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, the haircut would be really cool for Cable. It's either that or kind of a Roy Batty from Blade Runner,
yep,
you know, kind of thing, and then make him look gritty and very like chiseled jaw and strong. Like I don't know, like there's not many like actors that I have in mind when I think about him. Like maybe a young Dolph Lundgren when he
yeah,
was like playing the Red Scorpion kind of,
yeah. That could
and
work for
and
sure.
yeah, I mean he's still too long. I would think Cable would be a little bit shorter, but yeah, that's kind of what I would have in mind. And I like it's sci-fi, it's military, and then I would give him rags and all that stuff and make him look really worn down.
Yeah.
That's
So in Germany, where you've been living, you said the past like 30 plus years. How are comics and comic art received there? Are there conventions? Is it still this thing of it kind of being looked at as not a quote unquote real job?
yeah. I mean, it's still not look. I mean, most people are like, "What? You draw comics? That's so cool! I read this one Marvel comic. It's called Batman." I'm like, "Oh
Oh
yeah, you
yeah.
did." And yeah, like I don't think that most people like have a real connection with comics. I mean, we have a small comics community in Germany, and we also have these shows, but I don't attend any shows in Europe anymore because of what
Like what
you just
Erica,
mentioned.
yeah,
Because
like what Erica said
yeah,
about it. Just if you want to sell your art, you got to cut it
no,
more than in half
it's
on
not
the
even
cost.
it's it's probably more than that. And then people want you to give them the art for free and basically thank them for taking it.
Uh,
You know, and I can't do like like if you the quality you're buying when you're buying. I mean, like first of all, I know I'm not a Julie, I'm not a Travis Charest, I'm not a Lenny Liu or any of these great artists. I know them, but if you buy my work, you buy quality, and quality costs money.
yeah,
And it takes me time to create all of that stuff, and I can't give my stuff away for free. I used to, like in the past, I would or give something for little money away, and then I would see it on eBay
yeah,
being sold for twice the price, or three times the price, and I was like, oh, so people are willing to pay for it.
yep,
You know? And you just gotta find the right people, and that's the thing. Like in Germany, all the shows that we have are basically C celebrity people who
right,
appeared maybe somewhere in Back to the Future in the background, and then they'll come to a show. I mean, sometimes you'll have really like big names there from Game of Thrones or some other movie or TV show,
right,
but it's mostly about celebrities and comics. Comics are, you know, even there, people look down on it.
yeah.
And if I would sell a 16 by 22 comic page for $10, maybe somebody would
Oh
pay.
wow,
You
yeah, that's crazy.
And I mean, I get it. For some people, it's, hey, yeah, I love Deadpool, Batman because I've seen a movie in which they appeared. But you can't expect me to give away my art. And like I could do all my stuff digital and be done with it. It's probably easier and cost me less time and everything. But I'm an artist. I like to feel this stuff. I have like my hands
Yeah,
dirty
you like the
and
tactile, you like the feel of the paper, the feel of the pen on the paper. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I do certain things digital. Like, I like the freedom of being able to do like a rough and be able to adjust things quickly and then print that out onto a board or whatever. Um, but as far as like doing everything digitally, like, it just doesn't have that much of an appeal to me. I like the feel of the paper and everything.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing. I make I do all my layouts digitally and then print them out and then trace them or print them as blue lines on the paper and then just go and ink the thing. There has to be for me at least, an analog side to the whole thing. Like I don't feel happy if I'm drawing or inking on paper. I have to have it like for if there's a super tight deadline or if it's a project with someone I've never worked before and I'm not sure they're a professional or not, I will go digital because then I know, hey, maybe that person will ask for revisions and changes and everything, and I don't have the patience to redraw
Yeah.
everything. So other than that, I am basically uh, just a paper. I like to draw on paper. I like to use my pens, the colors, spraying around, experimenting things and finding new ways because I had some of my artwork from my project with me when I went to the last show in the States,
Yeah.
Charlotte. North Carolina Heroes. And when people saw those pages in, in person, there were some editors talked to, some writers, and some of my artist friends, and you could see the reaction. They're like, "Oh, you really did this?"
Yeah.
This oversized paper, because there's always a different reaction when I do something digitally. It's like, ah, okay, nice. When I do it on paper, and I always feel like on paper it looks better. In my case, I can't. I don't know, for some reason I cannot have the get the same kind of quality in my
Yeah.
digital work as I have in my tradition. Some people can do that and they do amazing work, and I truly appreciate what they do.
Yeah.
I truly appreciate it, but it's not working for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, like the sense of scale kind of gets confusing, like especially if I'm working on an iPad or something, and it's like I think the ability to be able to zoom in too much is like a detriment. It's like, yeah, it's really cool to be going in and getting this little tiny line that nobody's ever going to see when it's reduced down. But, I like,
It's a,
the way my brain works, it's easier to work things out on the paper. I do have trouble like going really big though, so I'm impressed by you. Like for me, doing anything bigger than on an 11 by 17 would be pretty intimidating.
I mean, dude, that's also like just a matter, and ironically, digital art helped me to become a better traditional artist, which is funny because, you know, I used to have a really hard time uh, like doing layouts digitally and then doing it on or transferring it on paper and making it look cool. And at a certain point, I found a brush. I always thought in my head that it's because of the brush that I'm working with. The brush was like a Sharpie,
Yeah.
and I started using it, and all of a sudden started using thicker outlines, more blacks, and I was less detailed and everything. Excuse me. And then at a certain point, I started to print the artwork out and trace, and then all of a sudden, I found my kind of like my routine, you know,
Okay.
and And then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I should try to do one really big piece and make it really nice and everything." And I started doing it. And obviously the first few pieces took me forever, like at least 4 days, to finish it. And I was like, "Oh, shoot." Then once you get into the groove, it just becomes another task. And I honestly, I think working on 16 by 22 for me is faster than working on 11 by 17, because 11 by 17, if I would like look at it, it would look like baby paper,
Yeah.
for like,
Probably feel like you have
and
a bit more freedom.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore, like, I enjoy doing it. I mean, I know it's not for everyone. I feel comfortable with it. And
Yeah, Frank Cho does all his work like really big
yeah,
as well. He's somebody I'm a big fan of his work, and I always watch his videos, and he's got that giant paper as well. Yeah.
and
Frank,
those giant boobs.
hey, he draws nice curvy women, I'm not gonna lie.
Dude, I love his work. He's such an amazing artist, like so versatile,
Yes.
and he can go from making really goofy to super fine art quality. and
Yeah.
and I don't know, man. I don't know what to say about him. He's just
I
he's
have
just
up on
amazing.
my
He's
shelf
amazing.
here, I have like his I think it was the Savage Wolverine he did, that Wolverine series,
Y-
and I have the IDW artist edition of that, and it's the size he did it at, so the book is gigantic, and it's
Okay.
all the high quality scans of
Wow.
the original pages, and it's just
Oh, wow.
insane to pour over and look at his work up close and in all that detail of the originals. It's just phenomenal to me that he does that.
Do you want me to send you my mailing address? You can send your work over. Yeah,
If I had a second one, I would, but it was a hard one. It was a hard one to get. Yeah, a lot of that stuff that goes out of print pretty quick, and I was lucky to be able to snag that one.
And one of my cherished possessions is the Jean Paul Leon Winterman
Yes,
artist
I
edition.
got that one too. Yeah, that one's great.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
that is a source of inspiration. I mean, I was lucky enough to meet him um, a few times, like 2 or 3 times, and he was super nice, very humble. Like when I talked to him, I was like, "Dude, you're like one of the most amazing artists," and
Yeah.
uh, like this, and but super humble, super nice, and it's a tragedy that he's gone.
Yeah,
I'm glad that they did the artist edition because his work, needs to be seen in black and white
it
and
does.
in oversize. Yeah,
Yeah, we lost so many legends within the last few years. Him, Neil
yeah,
Adams. Um,
yeah,
I mean, just way too many. Way too many of these. Kim Jong Gi, like,
yeah.
telling you, man.
Yeah, Kim Jong Il was a really tough one, like unexpected.
Very.
But the the sad thing is, I remember like a day or two ahead of his passing, I saw some pictures from him on Instagram where he was at one of his presentations, and I thought to myself, he doesn't.
Mm,
He looked really pale and
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and I thought to myself, all this feeling because when you're like
Oh,
flying
yeah.
a lot, it takes a toll on your body. Honestly, man, it was crazy. I saw him and I thought to myself, wow, he doesn't look good. He's like maybe he should take a break.
Yeah.
And then I was coming to New York for New York Comic Con. I was staying with my art director,
Yep.
and all of a sudden, one of the guys was like, "Kim Jong Il just passed."
Yep.
I was like, "What?
Yeah,
Nah, come on, that's bullshit."
because he was traveling there. Like he was, I believe he was on his way to that convention, and when it happened at the
Exactly.
airport.
And I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think I was supposed to have dinner with him
Oh
like
man.
that weekend
Yeah.
because Jim had invited me to have dinner with him, and there's he has like this special place he always goes
Mm-hmm.
to with guys from Kim Jong Il, and I think I think he had me invited as well, and I would have basically joined them. So I
Yeah.
was I met Kim Jong Il 2 times before or 3 times. I never really like had the time. I mean, obviously there's the language barrier,
Yeah.
but it would have been amazing to just be around him. And
Yeah, I got to meet him in 2016. The one time I got to go to San Diego Comic Con, and myself and my friend Tom Nguyen, the great inker for DC Comics, a good friend of mine, and now he's doing all his art and creator owned stuff too, which is really cool to see. But we got to connect down there, and I remember going to Kim Jong Gi's booth and buying the books and getting I'm very fortunate to have one of his drawings inside one of the books,
oh,
and yeah, just getting, like you said, getting to watch him do his thing was just phenomenal. So I really cherish that memory that I actually got to be in his presence and own a piece of his original work inside the book that I got from him was really cool. He was just on another level though. The way his mind worked and his visual library he had inside his brain was just on another plane of existence, really.
that's like when we are, I don't know, microbes, he's probably like a
Yeah.
like this gigantic organism with a million neurons connecting at
Yeah.
the same time. I was like, whenever I saw him, I was this. No, this is I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Carl Kapinski's another one of those guys. Like he was
Yeah,
with that group, and yeah, he's getting to be on an insane level too. I look at some of his stuff and I watch he do the same. You have you seen him do his two pencils?
yeah. So
Crazy.
I'm like, I can't even with my left hand. I can do anything. I'm sure if I trained myself, I could probably. Obviously, it's just the control
Yeah.
that you need. for the hand, right?
Well, and it's
Because
also like what parts of your brain are activating too. Like if you're right or left brain, that can have some effect on the ability to do that as well.
I think one interesting case is Frank Frazetta,
I
because
was just gonna,
he
yep.
was right-handed. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
He
bring
was
that up.
right-handed, had the stroke. He had the stroke, and then he started working with his left hand, and he was just as. And I
Yeah.
think honestly, like whenever I see artists and they are like, especially, I always look at which hand they are using when they're drawing. And most of these guys, they're all using the left hand.
Yeah.
Like left-handed people, they have like, I don't know what's going on there, but artistically, they are always a little bit better.
Yeah.
I don't know, crazy good people. Some, for example, like Olivier Coipel, you know,
Yep.
he's I was checking when I saw him for the first time. I saw he was drawing the left hand. I was like, oh yeah,
Some secret
he's one of
there.
those guys.
The
Yeah,
brain is wired for art. Well,
yeah.
before we close out here today, I gotta ask you. So, coming back from being that little kid in the hospital, getting the Jim Lee X-Men, fast forward many, many years later, and you connect and you actually get to meet with Jim Lee. I just want to talk about that experience a little bit and how surreal that must have been for you to come up admiring somebody and then to, be in their presence and to also be a professional artist and everything. So what was that like for you, and how'd that connection come to be?
Okay, so it's kind of funny because back in 2004, it's a totally weird story. I just started to visit a university, and some of the people that went to university with me said, "You know, Jim Lee is going to be at a convention here in Germany," and I was like, "Oh wow, I needed to figure out how to go there." I had maybe $150 to my name on my account, my bank account, and only the train ticket would have cost me that much to get there.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm willing to go there, sleep outside, to go in line and then meet him and show him my work and see how he reacts. And all of a sudden, when I was checking something on the internet in the university library, one of the guys who was sitting next to me was, "Hey, aren't you the guy who always draws comics?" And I was like, "Yes, yes." And he's like, "Well, we're going to this convention, and do you want to join us? Like, you would have to pay us $20 for the gas, and then we could take you with us, and you can stay with our friend, or you can stay with us." And I was like, "What?"
Oh
All of
wow.
a sudden, like,
Yeah.
totally weird, because I would there was no way I'd be able to go. And then all of a sudden, these strangers, they asked me if I wanted to come with them. And I went there, and I was like waiting in line, like all the people were there. Um, and then, I was talking to someone, and he looked at my work. And then all of a sudden, one of the people from the booth saw my work, and he was, "Hey, can I have a look at this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he looked at it, and he was like, "Oh, wow, this is really good." And he was, "What plans? Do you want to talk to him?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And he was like, "Wait, let me ask you." And then he went to Jim. He said, "Hey, Jim, this kid wants to talk to you."
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah." He was like, "When I'm done, we can talk." And then he was sketching and everything. And then all of a sudden, like he was like, "Come over."
Yeah.
And then I went there, and I was like, "Hey, my name is Sedat," and everything. And he's like, "Yeah, I know you. I know you from the internet."
Wow.
I was like, "What? How do you know me?" And he was like, "Well, you're one of the people on the MSN forums. I don't know if you remember
Oh
those
yeah,
forums."
way back. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was totally shocked. And he looked at the work, and he gave me this really good feedback on the stuff, how I could change things, how I could do the storytelling better and everything. And then he looked at me. He was, "Hey, do you want to have a draw?" I was,
Yeah.
"Please, like, why not?" And then he went, and he did this by 17 drawing for me.
Oh wow.
I was like, wow. And then a few few years later, I went to San Diego. And, he was at a signing session, and this is the time before San Diego became this crazy
Yeah.
madness it is now. It was, you, I booked my tickets for San Diego maybe 3 weeks ahead of
Oh
the show.
wow. Yeah.
And
Now you
y-
have to do like a year before.
yeah, and I I was standing there, and there was a huge line, and I was like, "Oh, there's no way I can get to talk to him."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he was like, while he was signing books, he looked up and he saw me. He was, waving his hand, and he went.
Yeah.
I went there, and he talked to me. He was, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Well, I'm trying to get work." Blah blah blah. And then he called one of his guys, and he's, "Hey, get so and so," and that was one of his editors from Wild.
Right.
You know, he said, "Tell him to have a look at the work, and then whatever they think, then maybe you guys can figure something out." And then, I don't know, a few years later, we met online basically again on, I think it was Instagram. And then, I sent him a message, he sent me a message, and we stayed in touch. And then he was like, the 1 year that I didn't go to New York, he sends me a message and says, "Hey, are you going to be in New York? I would like to invite you to have dinner."
Oh man.
Oh shit! And this is 2 weeks ahead of New York, and I was sitting at home like, should I fly in?
Right. Right. Yeah.
But I couldn't do it. And then I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm not going to be there this year, but I will be in Los Angeles in just a few months. Would you be okay if we meet each other instead of like in New York?" It was like, "Yeah, sure." And then we went there, we sat together, and it was kind of surreal, you know.
Yeah.
And, and then he invited me to go with him to the DC office, and that was, one of the ladies that was showing me around. She looked at me. She was awesome, right? And I was like, "This is Neo's taking the red pill,
Yeah.
and this whole new world is opening up to him." And this is like, I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. I still can't believe that this is actually happening. And it's not it's not like Jim and I exchange
Right. Right.
messages daily or something like that. It's not that. It's like, I think he likes me, I like him, and he appreciates his fans. And I think the stuff that he's done for me in that kind of regard is just a bit of what you see, what he's constantly doing for other people.
Right.
He helped so many people. Even I think there's this very well known Korean American artist, David Cho, I
Oh
think is
yeah.
his.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he I think he was on Kevin Smith's podcast back in the,
Yep.
and he told a story about how he was completely broke, and Jim hired him to paint the portrait of his family, and obviously gave him a lot of money to do
Yeah.
it, and basically saved his ass from going bankrupt.
Yeah.
You know?
Fast forward today, and David Cho is like a multimillionaire and like
Exactly.
awesome artist and everything. Yeah, that's so cool to hear. Like, when they say like don't meet your heroes, it's always good to see these situations where meeting the hero is every bit as special and more than you imagined.
Honestly, I gotta say, 99% of the heroes that I met, my personal heroes, great experience. When I met Jim, obviously, I mean, there's nothing that can compete with him, like in terms of the way he treated me, the way how nice he was to me. I mean, he never offered me any work.
Right.
But I don't think that this is the type of relationship where I would go and say, "Hey, do you have work for
Right.
me?"
Right.
You know, it's just so, I feel so privileged in the fact that I can call this person my friend, because to me, he will never be my friend. He's like Obi-Wan, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know, like Luke, and trying to learn from him and everything. And there's always the difficulty of saying, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?"
Yeah.
Because he's not my buddy, but it's crazy. But then again, like I met Travis Charade. Travis was also super nice. Olivier Coipel, Lenny Liu, all these guys, none of them, like Jerome Opena, like none of them was a disappointment. I always felt like, okay, these are really great people. I mean, of course, you're gonna meet one or two assholes, but with those people, it's like you always have that kind of feeling that they may be assholes, and then you
Right.
meet them in person, and you're like, okay, ass.
Confirmation. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
to wrap things up here, I wanted to give you a chance to let everybody know where to follow you online, the best place to keep track of when your upcoming projects are coming out, whether you're doing commissions, all of these things. I wanted to give you a chance to let everybody know about that. I know we have the project that cannot be spoken about in depth right now, but I'm going to be having you back on once it is able to be
yeah.
talked about.
I
So,
mean, once the book is announced and officially announced, I can tell you the title. It's going to be called The Whisper War, and it's written by Marc Guggenheim and illustrated by me and colored by most amazing colorist in all of comics. I'm not going to say his name now because as soon as I'm going to do that, people are going to take. Or you know what?
yeah.
His name is Carlos Cabrera. I got to make
Okay.
some promo for him as well.
There you
But
go.
he's like one of those gems. Like nobody knows him. Amazing artist. But if you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Sedat Oezgen. I'm sure you can
Yep. I'll
probably
be linking everything
at
up
the
for everybody.
and I take commissions. I will be actually in Baltimore this year, and it will be in New York Comic Con. I haven't announced it officially until now, but
Nice.
I'm glad to do it on your show.
I'm honored.
And I can, unfortunately, yeah, you're very welcome, my friend. And I can only do a little amount of commissions right now, but just send me a message, tell me what you're interested in, and
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Cable.
yeah, and then usually, like, if I come to a show, then I'll let you know, and then I can give it to you in person or hand it out to my art rep, and he can just mail it out to you, and yeah, and that's how you get a hold of me.
Perfect, brother. Well, I greatly appreciate you being on. I know we've been trying to put this
Thanks, bro.
together for a while. We worked our way through the
Yeah, man.
technical difficulties. We're on here. Hang out with me for a moment. I'm going to hit my outro, but first
Thank
I
you.
want to
Thank you.
remind everybody to go over to YouTube if you want to watch the video version of the podcast. You see Mr. Sedat's beautiful face and his cool studio. You can go over to YouTube /@Nerdy Mewzings, and Musings is spelt MEWZINGS. You can check it out there, or you can listen to the audio version on any major audio podcast platform. It would help if you gave us a follow and a like and a subscribe, and if you got a few moments to do a review over on Apple Podcasts, that would be awesome. It helps the algorithm, it helps get the show known to people, so that would be greatly appreciated. But until next time, everybody, keep it nerdy.